it's Ed from Runnable, and this is my initial run review of the Hoka Mach X2. Before we launch into the review, just to let you know, I bought these with my own money. Nobody's had a chance to change this review in any shape or form. These are entirely my own unbiased opinions of this shoe. Okay, what you'll get from this review, I'll go through the stats of this shoe briefly. We'll talk about my pros and cons of this shoe, talk about competitors, and then basically where this might fit in your rotation, and some thoughts on the run itself. So, 270 grams in my UK size 10. I went up half a size. I'm normally 9.5 in Hoka. Just because I heard it was a little bit narrower, this 4 foot. You can see I'm 9.5 in the Cielo. It is a little bit narrower. I'm glad I did that. It fits perfectly, size 10 for me. Most of you though, I've got wide feet, so most of you will be fine true to size in this shoe, I think. Or maybe half a size up, but most of you won't have to go up a full size. Okay, let's talk about the kind of stack height. So you've got 44 millimeters in the heel, 39 in the 4 foot, giving you a 5 millimeter drop. I think it feels slightly more than that when you're running this shoe. I think it's because I'm a 4 foot striker and there's a lot of bounce off the 4 foot in this. It gives that impression there's a little bit more of a drop to me. But actually it didn't affect me at all, that low drop on the run. I actually quite liked it. So, you know, it kind of meant that I've got more foam under the 4 foot, which I like anyway as a 4 foot striker. Talking about the run, on the upper on the run, it was fine. It's got this kind of engineered mesh. It's like a race day mesh actually. Synthetic material here, a bit like Super Blast in many ways, and I quite like that. It you know, hugs your foot nice. You get that kind of light racy feel. Laces and tongue were fine. Now a big talking point of this shoe was this kind of loose heel collar here, and the lack of padding around the heel. And yeah, and I didn't have any issues with this, but I've heard a lot of people are getting blisters at the back of their foot, back of their heel here. And yeah, like I said, I didn't have any issues with it, but it's one to definitely keep your eye on, because so many people have mentioned that. This suede material that's digging into their heel and causing the blisters. So what I would do, if you do try this out, is only use it on treadmills to start with. Do a long run on a treadmill so that you don't invalidate your warranty. And if you get any problems like that, send it back. It's not worth having. For me, I didn't luckily have any of those issues, so this worked fine for me, this upper. In fact, I like the upper. I think it's a good upper. Outsole, similar again to the Cielo. Lots of good rubber coverage, quite thick. You can see, if I get it closer, you can see quite thick, decent rubber. Good grip. There were some slippy areas where I ran, which was fine. Good downhills, good uphills. Can't really fault it. You can see these gaps here, the peba-topped plate showing. All in all, good outsole. Midsole, like I said, 44 in the heel, 39 in the 4 foot. Gives you that 5 millimeter drop. Quite responsive foam. The blue foam is the peba foam, you can see here. And the orange foam is the EVA. So that's there for support. So as you compress the peba foam, this keeps a kind of stable landing pad for you, so that you don't spring off left and right. And you can see as well that carbon winged plate there also helps with stability, keeping your foot nice and locked forward rather than going left or right. So it is a fairly stable shoe actually. I didn't feel any kind of instability when I was out running in this shoe whatsoever, and I think those two things are the reason why. But also what I didn't really feel is the plate much, the peba-topped plate. It's not carbon plate, so I feel like it is there for stability reasons, a bit like with the Cielo. I didn't engage the plate much in this either, and that's also a nylon plate. So I think like the two are using plates for similar reasons there. I think also the plate is quite low down in this shoe. As you can see, it's down here underneath this peba foam. So often with that, unlike say the Sky Paris where it's higher up, you don't necessarily feel the plate unless you're really pounding the floor with the shoe. So heavier runners may engage that plate more than I would. I'm 10 stone, so for me, I'm not that heavy. I often don't engage plates that are lower down anyway. So midsole, nice and springy, not like to the level of the Cielo, like I've heard comments that it's the same feeling as the Cielo. It's not, it's firmer than that, but it's still nice and springy. It's like a bit like the Balos, I would say, in terms of the feeling you get from this foam. That the fresh foam that you get in the Balos is very similar. It's springier than, I find it's springier than the Super Blast. It's not as springy as a Neo Vista and not as fun as a Neo Vista, you know, in general as a shoe. It's closest, I think, to the Balos actually. We'll talk a bit more about that when we talk about competitors though. But I would say good midsole, quite stable, quite springy, but not if you're hoping to get a training shoe that's a bit like the Cielo. It's not like that. It's not nowhere near as wild, as fun as that. Okay, so you just bear that in mind. Okay, so on the run with this shoe, like I said, it's very stable. I found it to, you know, I could flow through the stride. This rocker here keeps you flowing along. I'm a 4-foot lander, so I'd land and then I'd go through the rocker and move forward. For me, it was a good shoe for that. When I picked up the pace, it was fine. It wasn't electric. I'd run very recently in the Sky Paris. It's not like that. I mean, you wouldn't expect it. I mean, it's kind of 80 grams heavier than that, right? So, but it is a shoe that you could go up tempo with. So again, you could use this in a similar way to the Super Blast or the Balos or the Neo Vista, I think. I went slow in this shoe, it's fine. Probably better than the Super Blast. Not as good at slow paces as the Neo Vista, similar to the Balos. So yeah, so I mean, we talked a lot about the competition there, but if we can just, if I bring them out now, so what we got, so I'll hold them up in a sec. Right. These 4 shoes are very similar. What I would say is the Balos and the Mach X are quite very similar, I think. You get a very similar ride. Difference is this has got a plate, this hasn't. The foam in this is slightly bouncier and slightly more fun. This though, I think maybe you could go a bit faster in, okay? If I compare this with the Neo Vista, Neo Vista's more fun, a little bit softer ride, better at slower paces. Again, I think this is better at faster paces, less fun. Stability wise, very similar. I think Neo Vista's just has it on stability. This is a bit more stable than the Balos, I would say. And then finally, the Super Blast, definitely this foam is more fun. This is a bit more hollow, as you know. Durability wise, I'm guessing this is going to beat them all. Upper wise, very similar uppers actually, kind of race fit uppers, and the same kind of material. Yeah, I think there are similarities here in terms of both of these you could go fast in. I think they're very similar in that respect. So what I'm basically saying is they're quite similar shoes here, and it's not that easy to pick one from the others. What I would say is these two are getting on for £200. In fact, they are £200, I believe, right? Whereas these two, you've got one that's 159 and one that's 169, okay? Quite a bit cheaper, doing similar things. And they're not that much inferior in many ways, if they are at all. So, you know, out of the 4 shoes, if you're thinking from a cost perspective, then one of these two makes sense, right? And I think it's very close. I would probably go with the Neo Vista, £10 cheaper. Also a bit more of a fun ride and slightly more versatile in I think it handles slower paces better. I wouldn't race in this one though, whereas I maybe could race in this, a 5 or 10k. So that's something to bear in mind. If you're going to want one shoe to do it all, then maybe you would go for this. If you want one shoe for all your training, but you're not going to race in, then maybe this one is a better choice, because it's just a bit more fun. And let's be honest, having fun is what it's all about. These two are arguably better shoes, just maybe slightly. I mean, maybe not the Neo Vista actually. Neo Vista for me is a wonderful shoe. But they are a lot more expensive, and I don't really see the point of paying that much more for something that's very similar. The only caveat I will have is, going back to the Godfather here, is this going to last you 700 miles? Whereas I doubt any of these three are going to last you anywhere near that long. So, you know, going back to cost, if you look at it from that perspective, then clearly this wins hands down. So I'm not making it very easy for you here, but I guess what I'm saying is this is a viable option. It's a fun shoe. If it's money's a problem, then go with one of these two, you know, because they're reasonably priced. If money's not an issue, then you could go with one of these two. And if you go with a Super Blast, you're getting a really good shoe, but you're also getting something that's going to last a long time, right? So I think that's enough on the competition now. I'll do a proper video on all of these, going through pros and cons and blah, blah, blah. But I think that gives you a good idea of my thoughts on them. And then the other thing to talk about is the rotation. Now, interestingly, what I've got, Hoka have really smashed it out the park this year. And I think you've got 3 shoes here, if you can afford it, that would be perfect in rotation. You've got the Skyward X that can handle the slower pace. It's very comfortable, easy run day kind of shoe. It's got a plate, so if you don't want something that's plated, you could maybe replace this with the Mach X potentially. But this I really like this shoe. It's really cushioned, and it would be great in a rotation with the other two, because this will handle quite a lot of mileage and all your slow runs. This one you could use for tempo runs, where you go up tempo, where you go at marathon pace and beyond. You could even do some interval training in this. It wouldn't be terrible. It just wouldn't be my first choice. Yeah, and this would do a good job at, you know, in between this shoe and this shoe, which would be your race shoe, which is weirdly, funnily enough, similar weight to the Mach X2, but this is a quicker shoe. It's got a more pronounced rocker. It's got a more responsive, amazing foam that just makes you fly forward through the air. You need getting used to this shoe, trust me. But once you do, it's a really effective weapon, particularly if you land and hit the ground hard. You will fly with this shoe. So that would be a good rotation if you want to keep it in the Hoka family, and it just shows how good Hoka have been this year with their shoes. So yeah, I mean, I would say this is a viable option. You know, on its own, you could use this for any kind of run. But if you do have the money and you wanted a rotation, then you can't really go wrong with what Hoka have done this year. And I would say that these 3 shoes will do it all for you. It will also break your bank account as well, unfortunately. But hey ho, that's running shoes for you. Anyway, that's kind of all I want to talk about in this review. I've rattled on for nearly 15 minutes. Hopefully you found that good. I've got some run footage after this for you to watch, where I obviously generate thoughts as I run, and that's often clearer than my thoughts now, actually. So please watch that, and if you like this content in general, subscribe, like the video, give it a thumbs up. Please comment on your own thoughts on what I've talked about. I think the more comments, the better. I'm trying to build a bit of community here. I know 1 or 2 of you are always commenting, but I don't generally get that many comments at the moment, and that's something I'm wary of. So if there's a reason for that, then comment and let me know. But anyway, all the best, everyone. I'm going to be getting ready for my Berlin Marathon in a couple of days. It's on Sunday actually. So wish me luck and take care. And I'll do some obviously some footage of out there and my travel on the way to the airport and that kind of thing. So see you later and have a good day. Bye bye. So I've got the Hoka Mach 2 on and just giving it an initial run to see how I feel about it. Feels nice and springy, bouncy, not too soft, but you get a nice little spring off the forefoot. Has a plate in it. I don't feel like I'm particularly engaging the plate much, has to be said. I ran earlier in the in the Sky Paris and it felt like I was engaging that plate a lot more than this one, although it's a different comparison, different kind of shoe. But it's a nice feeling, kind of keeps you popping along. Not too dissimilar to the Skyward X actually, but I think this is a bit nimbler, well, a lot nimbler, and I think I can turn over my feet quicker in this. Already I see this as a kind of Balos Super Blast kind of rival, but this is obviously plated as opposed to those two which are non-plated, but they've got it's got a similar sort of bounce to the Balos actually, not dissimilar feel to it actually. I just feel maybe a touch quicker than the Balos up there with the Super Blast. Gonna get hit by a car. I think with the plate you could probably go quite quickly in the shoe. I need to test it over, give it some strides at some point during this run and see how it goes. But I like the feel. It's nowhere near as soft or bouncy as the Cielo X1, and I heard that in some of the reviews they were saying that it was, but it isn't. Anyway, it's a bit noisy here. I'll speak to you later. It's not really surprising. It's not as bouncy as the Cielo X1 because it's a dual density foam. You've got peba on the top area of the forefoot, and then underneath you've got the harder, firmer EVA, which probably needs to break in a little bit anyway. So over time these may get more cushioned, more softer and springier. But at the moment they feel fine, just a little bit firmer than maybe I expected, and less bouncy, a lot less bouncy than Cielo, but they do have a nice bounce. It's not like there's no bounce, there is a bounce. Right, bit of a busy area, weaving in and out people. Anyway, that's all I want to tell you for now about these shoes. I'll catch up with you a bit later. Bye bye. I can feel the bounce in these, that's for sure. It's not a crazy bounce. I mentioned before, some people said it's like the Cielo X1. It's not like that. It's but it has got a nice bounce. It reminds me more, like I said, of the Balos. What I do like about it is it feels quite stable, and with the plate and with this foam, this dual density foam, I thought it may not, but it actually feels pretty good. Got quite, given that it's a narrowish shoe, the kind of outsole flares out a bit on the forefoot, and so as a forefoot lander I get this quite nice pad to land on and launch off. You get a decent toe spring from this shoe. I ran this morning in the Sky Paris, and that was something else compared to this. I mean, that had an amazing toe spring. I don't feel that in this shoe, but I do feel a responsive, nice little spring from it. A bit like the Skyward X, but like I said, definitely a more nimble shoe than that. It's a nice feel to it. Doesn't feel too heavy. I have to check the weight if I do the proper review, but I'm guessing a similar sort of weight to the Balos, around the 260, 270 mark. The upper feels nice and breathable. My feet aren't getting hot, although it's not particularly warm. Anyway, so it's not an easy test, that one at the moment. Surface is all dry, so I can't really test the grip that well on a wet surface, but what it's having to deal with, it's dealing with fine. It's got this nice rubber on the bottom you get with the Cielo X1. It's practically the same outsole and the same rubber, and the Cielo is really good, so this is going to be good, to be honest. I can tell you that now. I'll try and put a bit of pace on it and see how it goes. Yeah, it responds to the pace, that's for sure. Not a ridiculous propulsion, but you do feel a bit. I feel like there might be a slight braking period. Like I said, this is dual density foam, and the bottom foam is an EVA. So the EVA may need a slight bit of braking in. Not that it's a firm shoe, but it's definitely firmer than I expected, actually. I expected it to be a bit softer and springier, and it's not quite like that. I'd say it's somewhere between the Balos, which is the softer and springier, and the Super Blast, which is firmer, more hollow, somewhere in between that. I'm not feeling the plate, I think I mentioned that already, and maybe that as well. If you're a heavier runner, putting down more force than me, I'm 5'9", 10 stone, you might engage the plate a bit more, but it's definitely a comfortable ride. The upper, I'm not noticing much at all, even though it's narrow, feels nice. I went up a full size in this, actually, because I heard it was narrow, and because it's Hoka, so I always go half a size in Hoka, like I did for the Cielo, which is 9.5 for me. But actually this shoe, I knew it was narrower than Cielo, so I thought, well, let's go up a full size and make sure I'm covered there, and I'm glad I did, actually. Although there is room in the toe box, there's good thumbs width room beyond my big toe, and arguably I'd like it slightly more dialed in than that, particularly as this, I sense this shoe could be used up tempo, even potentially for the right person in a race, maybe a 10k or a half marathon. It's definitely got the cushioning and protection for that. Whether it's got the speed, I have my doubts. Not necessarily something I would pick, but if you want something that's not a ridiculous price like the races that you get, this might be an option. I'm feeling like it's, it could be on with the Super Blast in terms of like the pace you could get out of this. Maybe slightly quicker than the Balos, which begs the question, where does this fit? I mean, in the rotation, where does it fit? And I think it fits neatly between
So let's think. If you had Hoka shoes, you had Skyward X, you had this Mach 2, and you had the Cielo X1. I would say it sits right in the middle. Skyward X, do your slow runs, cushion, long slow runs. You use this for your up tempo runs like you might do Super Blast, and then you would use your Cielo, your racing. I suppose the slight doubt I have in my mind is Cielo can kind of do all of those better. So you could save yourself a bit of money and just get the Cielo, or get a couple of pairs. I know it's expensive, like that'd be 500 quid, but one to racing, one to do all your training, it might, I don't know, could save you slightly, save you a bit of money, not much though. But I thinking about it, I mean, I think Cielo at slower paces probably isn't as good as Skyward X, but definitely could be as good as this at tempo and long distance marathon pace running, which is where I see this. So that's kind of the issue. But if you don't have this Cielo and you have something like the Sky Paris or the Endorphin Pro 4 or even Endorphin Elite, this could fit in as a nice tempo marathon pace shoe for your marathon training. That's where I see this being, that marathon training, marathon pace, and up tempo for those quicker workouts. I'm not sensing this as a real speed merchant, so maybe not so much interval training, but it is a nice comfortable ride, and it's going to protect and cushion your legs well. I'm just going to try landing on my heel a second, see what that feels like. Right, feels quite stable. I think we'll do a proper review. Feels like there's a big heel flare at the back, which means the heel widens, and straight away it feels stable, slightly bouncier I think. I mean, this could be a good heel striker shoe. I quite like it actually. So those who are not forefoot landers, who are more midfoot to heel, this might actually work quite well for you. It's quite stable, quite bouncy. I think there's quite a lot of stack in the heel, something like 43 millimeters, something like that. So almost at the level of the Super Blast in that respect. So yeah, maybe heel strikers, this could actually be a better shoe for. 4 foot wise, it's good, but I'm not seeing anything in this that would make me want to take this on a long run more than say the Balos, more than say this Cielo X1, and probably not in place of the Super Blast either. And that's the problem that Hoka have got with this shoe. The competition, even with within its own ranks, and yeah, so it's a difficult one to know. It depends what shoes you own, but if you don't own this Cielo, this might not be a bad option, you know. I think, what was it, £160, cheaper than the Balos, cheaper than the Super Blast. It has a plate as well. I mean, £160, not cheap, but if you compare it to those two shoes, which are up at the 200 mark, that's £40 less. Are they £40 better? I'm not sure actually. I think Balos is maybe a funner ride than this, but this is definitely more of a fun ride than the Super Blast. Probably not as durable though, and that is the thing with the Super Blast. You're paying for some shoe, £200 for a shoe that's going to last you a long time, maybe double the length of time of some of these other shoes. So it kind of is worth paying the money. But anyway, they're my initial thoughts. Quite a nice ride, responsive, pingy, but nothing that's completely blown me away. Probably preferred the Balos the first time I ran in that, if I'm being honest. I think that fresh foam might be slightly better than this dual density foam, which surprised me because quite a lot of that foam under the forefoot is peba, so you would think it would be really good, really bouncy. I'm not quite feeling that, but like I said, I need to do a longer run in this shoe. These are my just very first run. My initial impressions are that it might need some breaking in and it's not quite as bouncy as I expected. I think that's all I want to say for now. I'll review when I get back. I'll summarise everything up for you and see you later. Hope that's been informative. Bye bye.